So let's talk about the accumulation of free radicals. Okay, so basically accumulation of free radicals can cause cell injury as well. So now, what are the mechanisms that can lead to accumulation to like in free radicals? So before we go into details, let's talk about what are the free radicals. Free radicals, basically, these are what we call like unstable compounds, and they are going to have a single electron in their outermost shell or in their outer orbit. So what are we saying? What are free radicals? So free radicals are what? Are unstable compounds with what? With a single electron in the outer shell or orbit. Very, very important definition. Okay, so basically, if a compound has a single electron in the outer orbit, basically it is unstable. It is able to what? To react with other things, and that's a very, very dangerous thing if it happens under in our body. Okay, so that unstable compound can start reacting with what? Other substances, causing what? Cell injury. Okay, now the question is, what are the types of those free radicals that we are talking about? There are radicals that can come from what? Oxygen, which we call oxygen-derived free radicals, okay? Or sometimes we just call them ROS, which is reactive oxygen species. So we just call them reactive oxygen species. So reactive, the first type of what free radical is what? Reactive oxygen species, which we just call them ROS, okay? Or oxygen derived free radical. That's the first one because they contain oxygen, okay? What's the other one? The other one also that one also, nitrogen can form also free radicals, so we call them nitrogen derived free radicals. Okay, so I'm going to call them, we can call them reactive nitrogen species, okay, or we can call them nitrogen derived free radicals. Very, very important point. Okay, so this type of radicals for nitrogen, they contain nitrogen, and also they are highly unstable and causes what? A lot of what effects that we'll talk about. Okay, what else? Also, if you look at some certain chemicals, instead of they can have same effect as the reactive oxygen species or like the nitrogen derived free radicals, they can have the same one. So those chemicals, they can also cause what? They are also free radicals, but they are not derived from oxygen nor from nitrogen. Then they come from what? Chemicals. Okay, so we can just call them chemical derived free radicals. Chemicals derived free radicals like what? The methane tetrachloride, this one, or this one, or the methane trichloride. Okay, so those are the what? Chemicals. So these are very, very dangerous what? Chemicals that can cause what? Damage to the cell. Okay, so basically there are three types of what? Free radicals. They are the one that can come from oxygen, there are ones that can come from nitrogen, and there are others that can come from what? Chemical agents, like what? Like the tetrachloromethane, also the trichloromethane, that one. Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, so these are the three important types of free radicals. Now let's talk about the mechanism of what? The production of free radicals, because it's very, very important to understand the mechanism of what? Production of free radicals, so that we can understand now also the mechanism of how those free radicals can be removed from the body, because constantly in our body free radicals are always what? Produced, but they don't injure us, they don't injure our cells unless maybe there is a cause. Okay, So we'll talk about those systems that can remove what? The free radicals from our body to prevent cell injury. Okay. Now let us talk about the first one. Okay. So let's talk about this part. This part basically this is a cell with a mitochondria. So basically this one is a mitochondria. Okay. This one is a mitochondria. Is a mitochondria. Okay, that's a mitochondria. Remember that. Okay, now the mechanism basically we talk about just two. This one, the one coming from the reactive oxygen species, and the one coming from what? Nitrogen oxygen what species we'll talk about. So the first one is this one. So this cell basically just maybe not just a normal cell, not the immune cell like the phagocyte, which is macrophages or neutrophils. No. So we'll talk about the neutrophil this side, but this is just a maybe an endothelial cell, N cell. Okay. So this cell is able to generate what? Like energy here. So remember that all the cells basically they need what? ATP. And remember that in the electron transport chain from the mitochondria, that's why we can get what? ATP. And remember that ATP production it is dependent on what? Oxygen. And 4 electrons has to be added to the what? Oxygen, so that it can be changed into what? Water, and the ATP is going to be produced. But remember that the reactions in our body are not 100% efficient, meaning that there will be a mistake that okay, not all 4 electrons are going to be added to the what? To the oxygen. Basically, there will be 1 electron that's going to be what? Left in the outer orbit, forming what? The oxygen species. But just small amount of oxygen species, because there's just a mistake, and that mistake can be corrected by what? This system that we're going to talk about. Those are the ones that are used to what? Remove the free radicals from the board. Okay, minus the cause. So what are we saying? So we are saying in the mitochondria, basically in the electron transport chain, electron transport chain, let's say there's a mistake. Okay, let's say there's a mistake. Basically we have oxygen here. Okay, that oxygen has to be converted into water and ATP. But if let's say there's a mistake, if there's a mistake now, it will be converted into what? It will produce this one. It will produce this one. Okay, it's going to produce a superoxide. So this is a superoxide. It's going to produce this with the 1 electron in its outermost shell. Then that is a superoxide, one of the what type of free radical for oxygen. Remember that the examples of reactive oxygen species are what? Superoxide, which is the first thing, and what's the second thing? Hydrogen peroxide. What's the last thing? Which is hydroxy what? Free radical. Very, very important 3 types of what? Reactive oxygen species. So this is what happens. Okay, so spontaneously oxygen can't be converted into water and ATP. They need to form what? This superoxide molecule. Okay, this superoxide molecule is going to be converted into what? Another substance. Very, very important substance. Why is it going to be converted into that substance? Because that superoxide is so reactive and can what? Start damaging the what? The cells. Now the mitochondria is so sensitive that okay, there are some free radicals we need to remove them. So there will be an enzyme that's going to be activated, which we call superoxide dismutase. So superoxide dismutase is going to be activated so that it can convert what? This free radical into what? Hydrogen what? Peroxide. Very, very important. So what enzyme is going to be activated? We are saying superoxide dismutase. Okay, superoxide dismutase is the one that's going to be activated. Why? Because it has to remove that oxygen derived species. Okay, which is the superoxide molecule. Now if this happens, remember that this hydrogen peroxide, although it's a oxygen it's a reactive oxygen species, it is able to what? To diffuse across what? Biological membrane. Very, very important. The reason why it's able to diffuse, because it has to move out from the what? Mitochondria and go somewhere where it can now fully convert it into a molecule that is what? Not reactive, which is maybe water. Okay, so this hydrogen peroxide it will move out here from here, then it will go where? Here. It will go into the what? cytoplasm. So basically this is the cytoplasm of this cell. Why is it able to move? Because it is able to diffuse from what? From one membrane to another, okay, to pass through the mitochondrial membrane into the cytoplasm, as well as it can move out of the cell as well, so that maybe it can go somewhere else where it can be broken down, okay. So now what else? So the question is, what's going to happen to this superoxide free radical, or this superoxide molecule? What's going to happen? So it's going to be converted into another what? Another free radical. So let's say it's not going to be destroyed into water. It's not going to be destroyed into water and something that is less reactive, maybe into again oxygen. Okay, it's not. Now it's going to again produce what? Another free radical. So this one can be converted into another thing. Okay, it's going to be converted into what? Into what we call hydroxide free radical. Okay, hydroxide free radical in the presence of what? Ion as one of the factor that's going to promote that, and that chemical reaction is what we call Fenton reaction. So in the cytoplasm, this hydrogen peroxide can be converted into what? Hydroxyl free radical, and in the presence of what? Ion. Okay, this one, in the presence of ion, which is 2+, ion 2+. And that this chemical reaction is what we call the Fenton what? Reaction, because it's happening in the presence of what? Ion. Okay, very, very important. Sometimes it can also happen in the presence of what? Copper. No wonder if you start talking about here the mechanism of removal of free radicals, we'll talk about the transferring molecule plasmin. Those things, they like to take ion from the plasma, and also copper from the plasma. If they are storing or they are keeping ion from what? Going to the cell, basically it will lead to what? Not to produce what? Hydroxide free radical, preventing this Fenton reaction. Okay, so we'll talk about that, don't worry. So since we've talked about the production of hydroxide, there is also another thing that can happen as well. Another thing that can happen is that this superoxide as well can be converted into something else. So it can be converted into what we call hyponitrite. Okay, so if it combines with nitric oxide, it's going to be converted into what we call hyponitrite type of free radical, which is also a very, very dangerous type of free radical. Okay, we'll talk about it from this side. Okay, so this is the main mechanism that will happen that will lead to the production of what? These free radicals that we've talked about. Okay, this is the first one. The second one is this one. Okay, the second one is this one. So this one now, it is now a phagocyte. Okay, this is a phagocyte. So let's just say this is a phagocyte, basically neutrophil or macrophages. So now there is also an important thing that's going to happen. Remember that this is the cytoplasm. So this is the cytoplasm, and this, the blue thing, this is what we call the phagosome. Okay, this is the phagosome. This is a phagosome. Okay, and remember that in the phagosome, that's where a lot of things happens when a phagocytose like bacteria and maybe other foreign substances are going to be destroyed inside the phagosome, because sometimes if phagosome combined with what? A lysosome, is going to form what we call phagolysosome, so that it can be destroyed within those what? Vesicles. Okay, so let's just say, okay, this is a phagosome or phagolysosome basically. Okay, there's an important thing here, very, very important enzyme here, this one, which is just waiting for something to happen. Okay, what is that? This is what we call phagosome, phagocyte oxidase. So that's the phagocyte oxidase. It's going to do something. Okay, it will get what we call NDPH. So it's going to get what we call NDPH. It's going to get this one, very, very important, NADPH. Sorry, NADPH. So NADPH, that is nicotinamide adenosine diphosphate. So it's going to get that, and it's going to go to get that and convert it into something which we are calling, which is superoxide free radical. Okay, so it's going to get the NADPH and convert it into what is superoxide. Okay, and remember that superoxide, what's going to happen to superoxide? As usual, it's going to be converted into what? It's going to be converted into what? This one. Okay, by SOD, which is superoxide dismutase. It's going to be converted into what? Into hydrogen peroxide. Okay, so this hydrogen peroxide now, what's going to happen to that? Now it will be converted into something very, very important, because if it is converted into something that is very powerful, it will help that to destroy, it will help to destroy the what? The bacteria which is inside, or the microorganism which is inside the phagolysosome, so that it can be killed. Okay, so now what is that? What is that substance? We call it hypochloric acid. Okay, we call it hypochloric acid. So we call it hypochloric acid. So now what is that enzyme that's going to convert hydrogen peroxide into what? Into hypochloric acid. We call it what? Myroperoxidase. Very, very important enzyme. We call it what? Myroperoxidase. Myroperoxidase enzyme is the one that's going to what? To get the hydrogen peroxide and convert it into what? Hypochloric acid. And this hypochloric acid is so like is so powerful that it can start what? Killing the what? The bacterial microorganism that is inside the what? Phagolysosome. Very, very important. Okay, and remember that, make sure that you take something very important here. This whole process that is happening within the phagocytes, okay, it is so similar to the what? The one that is happening in the what? Electron transport chain. No wonder this process is sometimes called what? Oxidative what? Burst, or sometimes it is called what? Respiratory burst. So this process that I've talked about is called what? Respiratory burst or oxidative what? Burst. Okay, there is also another thing that's going to be like needed here. Something that's going to be what? Done here. So remember that I talked about this superoxide. This hydrogen peroxide can also be combined with something else. So this whole thing can also combine with what? Nitric oxide. Can also combine with what? Nitric oxide to form what? Which is the hyponitrite. This one. So it's going to produce this one. Very, very also powerful free radical. This one. Okay, hyponitrite. Okay, this one. So also this one is also a very, very powerful free radical, and it is one of the good example of nitrogen derived what? Free radical. It is NO3 free radical. Very, very important one. So these all things, they are happening within the phagosome, because if they go outside the cell, they can kill the cell itself. No wonder they are just embedded within the what? The vesicle, which is the phagolysosome. Very, very important. So now, since we've talked about the mechanism on how free radicals can be produced, now what are the mechanisms on how free radicals can be removed from the body? Because they are very dangerous substances that are produced within the body. Okay. What are those mechanisms? What's the first one? The first mechanism is what? They can just like disappear on their own spontaneously. So we can say spontaneous decay. Okay, they can just undergo spontaneous what? Decay. Very, very important. Minus doing anything, they just disappear on their own. That's spontaneous decay. Minus using any system. Okay. The second one is what? Using the what? Scavenging system. Using the what? Scavenging what? System. So there are a lot of scavenging system. Okay. There are a lot of scavenging system. Like if you look at a good example, if you look at some certain enzyme like glutathione. Glutathione is one of the very, very important enzyme that's going to get the superoxide, the hydrogen peroxide, and convert it into water. Very, very important. And it's one of the scavenging systems. Basically, it's going to help in the removal of what? Free radicals, oxygen free radicals. What else apart from the glutathione. There's also a catalase. Catalase is one of the important also substance or system that's going to what an enzyme that's going to help to remove the hydrogen peroxide and convert it into what water and what oxygen. And where can you find the this type of catalysis? Basically can be found within the cytoplasm as well. Okay, what else apart from that? The other thing that happens apart from that, also what did we say? We also talked about something else. So we can use exogenous. We can also exogenous antioxidants. So there are also some substances that help to remove the free radicals from what they are not coming within the cells, but they are coming from outside. Okay, what are those? Like some certain vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin E, ascorbic acid. So those are also important. The removal of what free radicals. Okay, so those are under oxygenous what antioxidant. There are also endogenous what antioxidants as well. So the last one is what endogenous antioxidants. So what are those endogenous antioxidants? Those are, again, they are found within the cell. What are those? They are like remember that we talked about here the Fenton reaction, where it uses what iron as one of the important cofactor that can be used to convert hydrogen peroxide into what hydroxyl type of free radical. So what if we don't have iron there? So basically there are some proteins that can be found within the blood. Okay, what are those? So we can say like the transferrin molecules. So transferrin molecules, they help to remove what iron from the body like that, or like to keep iron like that, preventing it to go to different cells so that they can promote the Fenton reaction. Also ceruloplasmin, that substance also likes to keep copper. So copper can also be used here under Fenton reaction. So if it is not there, basically it's going to what help in the decreased production of what free radicals. Very, very important one. Okay, so now, so that's what we end from for accumulation of free radicals in the in the body. Okay, and before make sure that you subscribe so that you can be updated with our upcoming videos.